Hello, everybody. This is the video for Module 22 for Business Math and Calculators, which has to do with interpreting graphs. So we're going to be talking about four different types of graphs: pictographs, bar graphs, line graphs, and circle graphs or pie charts. And we'll just basically be going through some examples that involve a few questions associated with each type of graph. So with that, I will share my screen and we will go ahead and get started. All right, so here we go with some example problems. We're going to start by looking at a pictograph. And basically what a pictograph is it uses pictures, images, icons, something like that, to illustrate data, okay? So in this situation, what we've got is a situation where we are looking at the number of books that each person read. And the key thing with a pictograph is to look at the key or the legend down at the bottom in this case, and it indicates what each icon represents. So in this case, each book that appears is equal to 2 books that the person read. All right. And so what you can then do is you can look at the graph, and there's lots of things that you might answer based on this graph. You can count up totals. You can do other things like you could find averages. There's lots of different things that you could potentially calculate. So we'll just go through a couple of questions. In this case, the first question wants us to determine how much or how many books were read by all 6 people on our list. So to do that, what that simply requires us to do is count up all of the books that appear in our graph here. And the key thing to remember then is that each book symbol, each icon represents 2 books read by the person. So to count them up, we simply look at each number in our list or each section of our graph and count them up. So like the first person, Zane, there are 9 books in the graph. So that means he read 18. Seth read 4. Darren read 12. Yoshi read 16. Josh read 4 and Haley read 12. So again, to find the total, we simply just add them all up and we come to a solution of 66. So there we go. Our answer is 66 total books were read by the 6 people that were displayed in our chart. Okay. So again, there's lots of different types of questions that you might answer. The key thing is just understanding what a pictograph represents and how to interpret it. Here's another question. Who read the fewest books? In this case, there's a tie. Seth read 4 and Josh read 4. When you look at the icons, they have the fewest icons in their section of the graph. And so we simply, like I said, count them up and compare them to the rest of the people in the graph. And so our solution is both Seth and Josh. They read the fewest books in our list. So again, that just gives you a couple of types of questions that you might be asked when dealing with the pictograph, and there are many other questions that could be potentially asked. So just again, remember the key thing is to interpret what each icon stands for and use that to generate counts and frequencies and all that kind of stuff, and then use that information to help you answer the questions that are asked. All right, the next type of graph that we're going to look at is a bar graph. Okay, and a bar graph is simply that it uses bars to illustrate the data. In this case, what we've got is a graph that shows millions of dollars in profit for various years. All right, so what we simply need to do is look at the graph, interpret the scale is important here. So in this case, across the horizontal axis, we're talking about years. So that's obviously indicated as 1992, 93, 94, 95. And then the vertical scale is telling us the amount of money. Now, the key thing to notice is even though the scale is indicated as 3 100, 400, 500, 600. Those are in millions of dollars. And that's one area where people sometimes get a little messed up on graphs like this, is that they see the actual numbers that are used to mark off the vertical scale, but they don't convert it then based on what the label is. So 300 in this case means 300 million, and 400 means 400 million, and so on and so forth. So if we look at 1994, which is what the question is asking, how much profit was made, the graph doesn't include like vertical or horizontal lines to help us. So we just have to, estimate as best we can. It looks like that blue line or that blue bar falls halfway between 500 and 600. So 550 seems like a reasonable estimate as to where that value is at. The key thing to remember though is that it's in millions of dollars. So it looks like our answer is about $550 million in profit. Okay, so $550 million. So again, just make sure that you are careful in situations like this, that you accurately interpret, the scales and the values that are being represented. Let's do another example with this same graph. This time, how much total profit was earned from 1992 to 1995. So again, this is indicating that we want to do some addition. We want to add up the values from each of the years shown in the graph. So if we just start with the numbers themselves from the graph, 1992 looks like it's about halfway between the two tick marks on the vertical scale. So 350. 1993 looks to be about 400. 1994 we already determined was 550, and 1995 was 600. So we add those up and we get 1,900. But again, we have to interpret that in the context of the scale. It's 1,900 million. So when you add on some zeros and get that to the right place, our answer ends up looking something like this. So it's actually $1,900,000,000, $1,900,000,000, or $1.9 billion in profit. So again, the interpretation of the bar graph is critical in this particular example. So just be really careful when you see problems like this, and especially when they have a scale that is scaled a little bit differently in terms of what the label is and what the numbers are that are actually provided in the visual. So just be careful. But basically, that's it. Again, there's lots of different types of questions you could potentially answer. These are just two sample problems that you might encounter. All right, the next type of graph is a line graph. And a line graph is simply that. It uses a line to kind of illustrate. A lot of times it illustrates like a trend, so you can kind of visualize what might be happening. So a lot of times in a line graph, the horizontal axis across the bottom is associated with time. It doesn't have to be, but a lot of times it is associated with time in some way. And then the vertical axis is, the value that you're measuring. So in this particular graph, we're talking about tree growth. So we're looking at how the tree is growing over time. So it's giving you across the bottom each year that the tree height was measured, and then the height is in feet along the vertical axis. So the first question that we have here asks, how tall was the tree in 2005? So again, you go to the correct year along the horizontal axis and then go up to that point on the graph, and it looks like it's about halfway between 4 and 6. So it looks like, based on the graph, that the tree was about 5 feet tall. So there you go. That's really all there is to it. This one, the scale is exactly what it is saying. There's no having to multiply or anything like that, like we did in the previous example with the bar graph. So our answer is just 5 feet. All right, the next one says, how many feet did the tree grow from 2003 to 2007? So again, just another little twist on the types of questions that you might see when you're talking about different types of graphs. So in order to answer this question, what we need to know is, what was the height in 2003 and what was the height in 2007? So in 2003, the tree was 2 feet tall. In 2007, the tree was 14 feet tall. So again, if we want to find out how much the tree grew, we're going to have to do some subtraction. So we basically find the largest value minus the smallest value, and we come up with a solution of 12 feet. And that's the answer we're looking for. That's how much the tree grew during that period of time. So again, there you go with some examples for working with a line graph. Let's go ahead and move on to the final type of graph, a pie chart or a circle graph. And what we want to do here is calculate the percent of students that like music other than rap music. The key thing with a circle graph or a pie chart is a pie chart works really well for illustrating like percentages. So you can kind of see how things are split up amongst the different categories that are represented. And so the key thing to remember is that the entire circle, the entire picture represents 100%. So if you add up the different values that are shown here, the 35, 28, 15, 12, and 10, they should all add up to 100% because that represents the whole amount that was measured. A lot of times pie charts or circle graphs are used when data is collected, like in a poll or a survey or different things like that. So it just kind of depends on the situation. But in this case, we want to find the percent of students that like music that's not rap. So 2 ways you can do it. One, you can look at the 35% for rap music and simply subtract from 100. The other way you can do it is you could just add up the other groups that are not rap. Either way, you should get to the same result, which is 65%. So 65% of the students like something other than rap music. And there you go. That is the solution to our question. Let's look at one more problem based on this chart. It says if 200 students were surveyed, what number of them said that they preferred classical music? So this involves doing a little bit of mathematical work because the chart itself doesn't show actual numbers, it shows percentages. And we know in the problem that 200 students were surveyed to figure out this data. So what we're going to do is classical music is represented by 10% of the total. So what we're going to do is we're going to find that value. 10% of 200 of basically means multiply. So we're going to take the 10%, convert it to a decimal. So we're going to take 0.1 times 200 to get an answer of 20. So of the 200 students, 10% of them liked classical. That translated into literally 20 students. Okay. And so there's the solution that we're looking for. So sometimes with graphs like this, or any kinds of graphical situations, sometimes you might have to do a little bit of math to calculate values to interpret the meaning of the graph and to answer the question that is involved. But there you go. There's our solution, and we are all set. So there was a quick look at 4 different types of graphs. Again, we looked at pictographs, we looked at bar graphs, line graphs, and then circle graphs. All of them are different ways to represent data depending on the situation that you're dealing with. When you are given a graph and you're asked to interpret it, there are lots of different potential questions that could be asked. So in this video, we just looked at 2 questions associated with each graph. There's a lot of other things that you could potentially be asked. So really the key thing is being able to interpret the meaning of the graph, being able to tell what is the scale, what do the icons represent, what does each slice of the pie and the pie chart represent. It's just a matter of kind of looking at those things and being able to interpret them, and then maybe potentially do some math to complete a calculation or answer the question that's provided. So um, just if you need help with interpreting graphs, please again let me know. I'm happy to help you out. If you need more clarification about the process of interpreting a graph, like I said, let me know. Otherwise, I appreciate you watching the video. If you do need anything, let me know. Otherwise, have a great day, and I will catch you in the next video.